Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
By the time I won my Oscar, I honestly thought the movie of my life had already hit its peak. I was 42, slightly soft around the middle, standing in a tux that wasn't quite tailored right, holding a gold statue that felt heavier than my entire childhood. The lights were blinding, my palms were sweating, and somewhere past the cameras I could see her, Nicole, in a silver dress, eyes glossy, hands at her mouth like she couldn't believe any of this was real. The music swelled. They pointed me to the mic. I didn't write a speech, I lied. Of course I'd written one. I was a writer before I was anything else. But I know I need to thank the person who saw me when I was still invisible. Nicole, this is as much yours as it is mine. Cut to a reaction shot, Nicole wiping her eyes, blowing me a little kiss. The room said awe in that collective Hollywood way. Somewhere in a truck a director shouted, "We got it," and checked my emotional Oscar moment off a list. What no one knew yet, maybe not even me, was that this was also the night everything started quietly, politely, falling apart. Nicole and I met the way people in Los Angeles like to pretend they meet, organically. Which is to say, at a party thrown by an agency assistant in a mid-city duplex that smelled like weed, rosé, and too many aspirational careers. I was 35, newly emerging after my first indie breakout, the kind of movie critics call unflinching when what they mean is slow and kind of depressing. She was 27, a beautiful aspiring actress with 3 national commercials, a recurring role on a cable drama people swore they would watch, and that wide-open look in her eyes like the whole world was still a maybe will be. We ended up outside on a tiny balcony, sharing a cigarette like we were in a French film. "You're Miles Carter, right?" she asked. "Depends," I said. "Did you like the movie?" She grinned. "I cried. Twice. And I'm not a crier. So yeah, I liked it." "Well then, yeah. I'm Miles." She held out her hand. "Nicole Hayes. I make crying look believable on camera." We talked until someone complained their roommate had to work in the morning and we should all get the hell out. She gave me her number, I walked her to her Prius, and that was it. I was gone. That stupid, teenage kind of gone I didn't think you could be in your mid-30s. Within a year, she'd moved into my place in Los Feliz. Within 2, we were married at a vineyard in Santa Ynez, surrounded by people who made a lot of toasts about power couples and creative synergy like we were some corporate merger. We wrote scenes together, argued about dialogue, and made up in the shower. It was messy and loud and perfect. So when the Oscar came, it felt less like I did it and more like we did it. I honestly believed that. I believed it enough to do something very, very stupid. I stopped. I turned down projects. Real ones. Studio offers with 8-figure budgets. Directors I had no business sharing air with were sending, "Hey man, let's grab coffee" emails. And I said no. Because Nicole had a shot now, too. The Oscar made me hot, sure. But it also turned her into the wife of Oscar-winning director Miles Carter, which in Hollywood is basically a Kickstarter for your career. "It's your turn," I told her, lying in bed one morning as sunlight filtered through our too expensive linen curtains. She laughed and stole my pillow. "My turn for what?" "To be the one who's busy and important and never home. I'll cook. I'll walk the dog. I'll grow tomatoes and have opinions about school boards, I don't know. You run around set yelling action." "You're insane," she said, but her eyes were shimmering. "You'd really be okay with that?" I kissed her shoulder. I wanted to be the guy they point at and say, "He gave up everything for love." That sounds tragic and cinematic. "Or dumb," she said, but she was smiling. "Beautifully dumb." So I did it. I went from most in-demand director of the season to guy you vaguely remember from that one awards article. It wasn't instant, of course. Hollywood takes its time forgetting you. But the calls slowed. Then trickled. Then stopped. I kept telling myself that was okay. I had saved. We had money. We had time. We had love. That was the line I repeated like a mantra, "We have love." The first few times Nicole left for shoots, it was exciting. "Babe, they want me in Vancouver for 3 weeks," she said, standing in our kitchen, script in hand. "The director is obsessed with authentic emotional beats, whatever that means. I'm officially in my snotty crying era. I picked up the script, flipped through pages. Looks legit, I said, nodding at the watermarks and the studio logo. They paid you? She rolled her eyes. Through my agent. I have a contract. You're not the only adult here. I made her a little first day on set care package like she was going to kindergarten, travel size Advil, a pack of gum, a tiny notebook, and a Polaroid of us kissing, for her trailer. We did this whole teary airport goodbye, complete with forehead kisses and promises to FaceTime every night. For the first week, she called me from bland hotel rooms and cramped thrillers. I could hear background chatter, the murmur of crew, a PA calling someone's name, the hum of a soundstage. Today we did this scene where my character finds out her dad is dying, she said, peeling off her makeup with a wipe. The director kept asking me to reach deeper. I told him if I reach any deeper, I'm invoicing for therapy. I laughed. Tell him emotions are an add-on package. Premium tier subscription. We joked about craft services. She sent pictures of her on-set chair with her name on it. I posted one on my Instagram with the caption, "I knew her when she used to say line in our kitchen." It felt good. I liked being the background guy, the supportive husband. It was new. But then the projects started to blur. She'd come home for a few days, dump a suitcase of laundry on the floor, and within a week she'd be holding another script. The shoots got longer. The locations got fuzzier. "Where is this one again?" I asked, the fourth or fifth time she mentioned a new limited series. She paused just a little too long. "Atlanta. Or near it. They're still figuring it out." "What's it called?" She frowned at the cover page. "Untitled Project." "Sounds creative," I said. "Who's directing?" She shrugged, too quickly. "Some indie guy. You wouldn't know him." That little twist in my stomach, I recognized it, but I ignored it. Jealousy wears all kinds of costumes. Sometimes it looks like concern. I told myself this was what busy actress lives looked like. We'd signed up for this. People in our world lived on planes and in trailers and only saw their spouses on red carpets. Who was I, suburban dad with his herb garden, to complain? Besides, everyone seemed very excited about Nicole's moment. At parties, people I barely knew would grip my shoulder and say, "Nicole is killing it, man. You must be so proud." Interviews asked me about stepping back to support your wife's career in a way that made me sound enlightened and evolved. My therapist, not that I was seeing him regularly, but still, told me this was a chance to explore identity outside of work. I smiled. I nodded. I said I was proud. And I was. Mostly. But pride has shadows. The rumors started the way rumors always start in Hollywood, as jokes. I was at a brunch in West Hollywood, the kind people go to when they don't eat carbs but still want to perform having a life on Instagram. A producer friend, Eric, leaned across the table, lowering his voice in that faux conspiratorial way people do when they're about to say something they definitely want you to repeat. "So, is it weird?" he asked, spearing a piece of watermelon like it insulted his family. "Is what weird?" I said. He waggled his eyebrows. "Your wife and Harrington." I blinked. "Who?" "Come on, Miles." He laughed. "Ethan Harrington? Big shot producer? Owns half the valley? The guy who thinks a scarf is a personality?" "That narrows it down," I said. "What about him?" Eric shrugged. "He's been championing Nicole. A lot. People are noticing." "Championing," I repeated. "Like handing her scripts?" "And dinners. And weekend table reads in Palm Springs." He actually did air quotes. "You know how it is. I'm just saying, if my wife were working that closely with Harrington, I'd have questions." I laughed it off. "That's what you do. You push away the first little alarm bell by smothering it in humor." "Dude, we're in Hollywood," I said. "If I freak out every time my wife had dinner with a producer, I'd have a stroke." He raised his hands. "Hey, I'm not saying anything. Just people talk. People always talk. It's their favorite sport." Of course I googled him when I got home, like some paranoid boyfriend in a bad sitcom. I'd heard of him, I just hadn't connected the dots. Ethan Harrington. Mid-50s. Very white teeth. Produced a string of mid-brow prestige hits with titles like Broken City and Silent Oath that made a lot of money and won exactly 0 major awards. The trades loved him. Actors loved him. Crew loved his generous bonuses. Directors tolerated him. There were pictures of him at premieres, standing slightly too close to actresses half his age. Pictures of his wife, forever absent. Pictures of him shaking hands with studio heads, that shark smile in place. I asked Nicole about him that night while we were lying in bed. "So, you're working with Ethan Harrington?" I said casually, staring at the ceiling. She shifted. "Where'd you hear that?" "Eric mentioned something. Brunch gossip." She exhaled through her nose. "Eric talks too much." "That's his primary skill set," I said. "Are you?" She hesitated. "Just a fraction. But I'd spent my life directing actors. I lived in fractions of seconds, micro pauses, the way eyes flicker when someone is editing themselves in real time. He's given me some opportunities," she said. "Introduced me to some people." "Why?" "Just curious," I said. "He seems like a lot." She laughed, a little too loudly. "He's harmless. He likes to feel like a kingmaker. It's gross, but if he wants to throw a couple rolls my way to feed his savior complex, I'm not gonna complain." I nodded. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. Until I didn't. The fight that broke us wasn't even about him, at least not on the surface. It was about a Sunday. She was supposed to be home. We had planned a normal day, farmer's market, brunch, maybe a hike if we were feeling like people who did hikes. I'd laid out the cloth bags, made coffee, even booked a table at a place she liked that didn't treat avocado toast like a religious sacrament. Then, at 7 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Nicole, hey babe, schedule changed. Need to fly out early. Sorry." I stared at the text. No call. No explanation. Just gone. I called her. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. By noon I'd gone from mildly annoyed to pacing the kitchen. The dog watched me from his bed, ears flicking every time I muttered to myself. I made a sandwich and forgot to eat it. I checked her location on Find My Friends, then closed it, feeling like a crazy person. She finally called at 3. "Hey," she said, breathless. "Sorry, crazy morning." "Where are you?" I asked. "On my way to the airport." "Which airport?" She sighed. "Miles, I don't know, okay? My car's just driving." "Are you okay?" I said, trying to dial back the edge in my voice. "Like is something wrong?" "No. It's just a last-minute thing. Harrington needed me too." "Harrington," I repeated. "Of course. Miles. You couldn't have called?" I said. "We had plans." "Work came up," she snapped. "That happens. You know that better than anyone." "Yeah, but I usually tell you which city I'm disappearing to." She went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was icy. "Are you tracking me right now?" "What?" "No," I lied. My phone screen was still on the map. "This is what we're doing now?" she said. "I get a job, I get busy, and suddenly I'm on trial?" "I'm not putting you on trial," I said, even though I absolutely was. "But you're always gone. And vague. And what?" she snapped. "Say it." "And there are rumors," I said. "About you. And Harrington. And I look like an idiot." Silence. Heavy, thick silence. "You know what's funny?" she said finally. "When you were on set for 16 hours a day, and I barely saw you, and every actress in town was throwing herself at you, I never once asked if you were sleeping with any of them. That's not what I'm. But now that I have something," she continued, voice rising, "a producer backing me, doors opening, suddenly I'm guilty until proven innocent? I just want to know what's going on," I said, feeling like I was trying to grab smoke. "What's going on?" she said, is that he gives me a future. And you're a memory, Miles. A great one. An Oscar night. A story I'll tell. But I can't live in your past forever. The words hit harder than any headline, any rumor. He gives you a future? I repeated, stunned. What does that even mean? It means he believes in where I'm going, she said. You believe in where you've been. And then she hung up. I stared at my reflection in the black mirror of my phone, her words echoing in my head like a bad line reading. He gives me a future. Your memory. You'd think that would be the moment I got mad. Like, throw a glass, punch a wall mad. But it wasn't. It was the moment I got small. There's a particular kind of depression that hits men in Hollywood when the calls stop coming. It's not dramatic. It's not some big breakdown. It's slow. It's sitting on your couch at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, staring at emails you don't want to answer. It's saying I'm working on something when you're really just rearranging scenes in your head that you'll never write. I added heartbreak to the mix and washed it down with whiskey. At first it was a drink to take the edge off. Then a drink to help me sleep. Then a drink because it's 5 o'clock somewhere, even though it was 10 in the morning and I was in sweatpants I hadn't taken off for 3 days. People noticed, of course. My agent called, concerned. Friends invited me out to get some air. I made jokes about being in my writer-in-crisis era. It was easier than saying, my wife is probably sleeping with the man who writes notes in all caps and I can't stop thinking about it. The town moved on without me. New directors were the next big thing. Film school kids claimed they'd grown up on my early movies, which made me feel approximately 900 years old. The Academy invited me to be a presenter at the next Oscars. I declined, saying I needed to focus on personal projects. Translation: I couldn't stomach watching other people live my dream while mine gathered dust. Nicole came home sometimes. We did this weird dance of pretending everything was fine. She'd show up with gifts from duty-free, kiss my cheek, and talk about call times and coverage like we were just two working professionals catching up. I didn't ask where she'd been. She didn't ask what I'd been drinking. One night she came home to find me passed out on the couch, an empty bottle on the coffee table, some movie I directed years ago playing silently on the TV. She stood there for a long time, watching my younger, sharper self yell directions on screen while the current version of me snored. "You're wasting yourself," she said softly, not realizing I was awake. If it had all ended there, me slowly fading into booze and bitterness, her fading into some producer's entourage, that would have been a boring story. A common one, too. But life, thankfully, is messier. And somewhere in the middle of the pity and the hangovers, something in me snapped. Or maybe not snapped. Woke up. It happened on a Wednesday. Which feels right. Betrayal doesn't save itself for weekends. I was at my lawyer's office, not for anything dramatic, just some boring contract review for a residuals dispute. My lawyer, Marcia, was this no-nonsense woman in her late 50s who'd seen enough Hollywood divorces to power a miniseries. She'd represented me since my first real deal, back when I thought net points meant something. "How's Nicole?" she asked, flipping through papers. I shrugged. "Busy." "I saw her name in Variety," she said. "Attached to some Harrington project." My stomach clenched. "Yeah, they've been working together." Marcia raised an eyebrow. "And you're okay with that?" "Do I have a choice?" I said. "There's always a choice," she said, in that lawyerly way. "Why? Something bothering you?" I laughed, but it came out hollow. "There are rumors there, you know. And she told me he gives her a future and I'm just a memory. So that's fun." Marcia stopped flipping pages. "She said that?" "More or less." I rubbed my face. "Look, I know people mess around in this town. I'm not naive. I thought we were different." She went quiet for a moment, studying me like I was a contract with hidden loopholes. "Has she signed anything for him?" she asked. "Like what?" "Deals. Attachments. Producer credits. Anything that ties her to his projects." "I don't know," I said. "Why?" Because Ethan Harrington doesn't champion anyone out of pure goodwill, she said. He consolidates intellectual property, writers, directors, actors. He's a collector. You don't happen to know if your name shows up anywhere near their deals, do you? I shook my head. Why would it? But something in her tone made my chest go cold. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that when powerful men start hovering around the spouses of talented people, it's rarely just about sex. Sometimes it's about leverage. Control. Access. Access to what? I said. She gave me a look. To you, Miles. To your work. To your catalog. To anything you've pitched at parties and not followed up on. I frowned, trying to remember the last few years of half-formed ideas and drunken conversations. There was one thing, I said. A script I started before the Oscar, back when I still worked. It was this sort of meta-Hollywood drama about fame and burnout. Ashes of something? Marcia interrupted. Ashes of Fame, I said. How did you? She turned her monitor around. On the screen was a press release from Deadline, dated 2 days earlier. Ethan Harrington to produce Ashes of Glory, new drama about Hollywood's dark side. My title, slightly mangled. But the logline? That was mine. Word for word. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. That's my script, I said. He changed the title, but that's my story. I pitched that at a dinner 3 years ago. Nicole was there. Marcia clicked through the article, eyes narrowing. According to this, the script came to him through an actress he's mentoring. Working title was Ashes of Fame, but it evolved in development. She glanced at me. Guess who the actress is? I didn't need to. I already knew. She wouldn't, I said, though my voice sounded unsure even to me. She couldn't. People do a lot when they think it'll secure their future, Marcia said. Question is, did you ever register that script? Email it? Send pages? Anything I can use to prove it's yours? I have drafts, I said numbly. Old ones. On my laptop. Good, she said. Bring everything. Emails. Notes. Any proof you originated it. But why would my name be on their contracts? I said. Her smile was sharp. Because Harrington isn't stupid. If that script is half as good as you think it is, he knows he needs clean chain of title. He'd want some kind of assignment from the original writer. Even if that writer is drunk in his living room while his wife signs everything. The implication made my skin crawl. You're saying he bought my script, I said slowly, through Nicole. I'm saying it's worth finding out, she said. With your permission, I can request copies of any contracts your wife has signed with Harrington's company. Spousal disclosure. Standard stuff. Would she know? I asked. Eventually, Marcia said. But by then, we'll already have them. Something hot flickered in my chest. It wasn't the dull ache of jealousy or the fog of depression. It was sharper. Anger. Focus. The lion, finally remembering he had teeth. Do it, I said. Get everything. Marcia nodded, already typing. Welcome back, Miles. Getting the contracts took a couple of weeks. Hollywood might be built on lies, but the paperwork is very real. Harrington's lawyers weren't thrilled, but they couldn't stop it. Marcia sent me PDFs with polite but urgent subject lines. I opened them at my kitchen table with shaking hands, a cold cup of coffee sweating beside me. The first contract was a standard attachment deal. Nicole attached as lead actress to a Harrington-produced project. Fine. Normal. The second made my stomach drop. It was an assignment agreement. Legalese piled on legalese. But buried in there, highlighted by Marcia, was my name. Assigner, Miles Carter. Assignee, Harrington Entertainment LLC. Property, original screenplay currently titled Ashes of Fame, the work. Below that, a signature block. My name typed neatly. A cursive signature that looked like mine. Kind of. If you squinted. If you wanted it to. Only I had never signed it. Tell me you see what I see, I said, sitting in Marcia's office while she projected the contract onto a screen like it was a movie. "I see a forged signature," she said. "A bad one, too. They didn't even get your middle initial right." "And my wife signed as a witness," I said, pointing at the second signature. "Look at the date. That was the weekend she said she had a girls' trip to Palm Springs." Marcia steepled her fingers. "We can prove you weren't there. Bank records. Flight logs. Cell location. Hell, I'll subpoena your Uber receipts if I have to." I stared at the screen, at my stolen script, my stolen name, my wife's very real signature. "She was in on it," I said quietly. "She knew what she was signing." "Maybe she didn't understand the full implications," Marcia said, "but it sounded like a courtesy more than a belief." "That's generous," I said. "Lawyers are rarely generous," she replied. "But I am thorough. We've got them, Miles Harrington, for fraud and forgery. Nicole, at minimum, for misrepresentation. This is criminal territory." The words landed heavy. Criminal. Fraud. Forgery. I'd spent months drowning in self-pity, imagining my life as some tragic romance gone wrong. Turns out, I'd stumbled into a white-collar crime story instead. Nicole still thought I was broken. That was the part that started to make me laugh, in a bitter, disbelieving way. She thought she'd taken everything, my script, my future, my pride, and left me too drunk and too defeated to notice. She'd forgotten something important: I tell stories for a living. And Hollywood loves nothing more than a comeback story with a juicy third-act twist. "What do we do?" I asked. Marcia's eyes gleamed. "We burn them down. Publicly." In the weeks that followed, Nicole and I fell into a strange, brittle politeness. She'd come home from wherever she'd been, set, meetings, rehearsals, and I'd be there, sober now, cooking something, pretending to watch TV. We talked about the dog, the traffic, the fact that Trader Joe's was out of her favorite frozen dumplings. We didn't talk about contracts. We didn't talk about the fact that my name was attached to a scam she'd helped set up. She probably thought I'd given up, or that I'd accepted some new sad reality where my work belonged to other people and my wife belonged to their dinners. I let her think that. I went to meetings with Marcia. We assembled a timeline. Old emails from me to myself with early drafts of Ashes of Fame, date-stamped years before Harrington ever met Nicole. Notes in my phone. Files on my hard drive. We gathered proof that I'd never signed anything. Credit card charges placing me in Los Angeles the day my signature appeared in Palm Springs. Marcia set up meetings with a couple of trusted journalists, people who liked a good Hollywood takedown and weren't on Harrington's payroll. We fed them documents like breadcrumbs, careful and calculated. "I feel like we're planning a heist," I told her. "We are," she said. "Except instead of stealing something, we're just taking back what's yours." The press conference idea was hers, too. "You want a clean break," she said. "You want your name separated from this mess in the public's mind. You could quietly sue, settle, disappear, or you could walk into the spotlight on your own terms, tell the story, and let the industry decide who to side with. I know this town. They'll side with the narrative that makes them feel righteous." "And that narrative is?" I asked. "That a sleazy producer forged an Oscar winner's signature and used his wife to launder stolen IP," she said. "Hollywood loves to pretend it punishes men like that. It makes them feel morally superior while they greenlight the same guy's projects under a different LLC." "Cynical," I said. "Accurate," she replied. We picked a date. Booked a small hotel ballroom in Beverly Hills. Sent out invites to the trades and the major outlets. The subject line on the email was simple. "Press conference, Miles Carter to address Ashes of Glory controversy." Controversy, of course, didn't exist yet. But nothing attracts controversy like implying there already is one. The night before the press conference, Nicole came home late. I was at the kitchen table, going over notes with Marcia on speaker. "I still think we keep the tone factual," Marcia was saying. "No grandstanding. Let the documents speak for themselves." Nicole walked in mid-sentence, dropping her bag by the door. "Hey," she called. "Who are you talking to?" I ended the call. Just work stuff. She eyed the papers on the table. You're working again? Something like that, I said. She came closer, squinting at the logos on the folders, network names, law firms. For a second, I thought she might recognize something. But she just shrugged. I talked to Ethan today, she said instead, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. He wants me for the lead in Ashes of Glory. Said it will be my defining role. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It burst out of me, sharp and humorless. What? She said, frowning. Nothing, I said. It's just he's very generous. Giving you my defining role like that. She stiffened. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said carefully, that I hope he also gives you a good lawyer. Her eyes narrowed. What are you doing, Miles? Tomorrow, I said, standing up, you're going to find out. She looked genuinely confused. Annoyed, but confused. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The ballroom wasn't big, but it looked official enough with the rows of chairs and the little stage at the front. There was a podium with a microphone. A backdrop with the hotel logo. A pitcher of water and a glass that I absolutely did not spike with anything. I stood in the back for a while, watching journalists file in. Some were people I knew, old faces from junkets and press days. A few waved. There was a low buzz of curiosity, no one knew exactly what I was there to address. Harrington's team had released a bland statement about creative collaboration and shared story origins, but it hadn't done much to calm the speculation. Nicole wasn't there. Harrington wasn't either. This was my show. Marcia touched my arm. You ready? Not even a little, I said. Let's go. As I walked up to the podium, flashes went off. Cameras pointed. I had a weird flashback to my Oscar night, same posture, similar suit, vastly different circumstances. Thank you all for coming, I said, adjusting the mic. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. I know your time is valuable, so I'll get right to it. I told the story. Not the melodramatic version swirling in my head while I was drunk at 3 a.m. But the simple, boring, devastatingly clear version. I talked about writing Ashes of Fame years ago. About the early drafts, the aborted meetings, the way life and success pulled me away from it. I talked about pitching it at a small dinner, with Nicole present. About Harrington's polite interest. About nothing, for a while. Then I described seeing the press release for Ashes of Glory. My title, my story, my themes, all filtered through a slightly more marketable lens. I thought maybe it was a coincidence, I said, even though everyone in that room knew there was no such thing in this town. Maybe someone had a similar idea. It happens. We tell the same stories over and over. That's what we do. I clicked the remote Marcia had handed me. Behind me, a screen lit up with a side-by-side comparison, my original logline, pulled from an email I'd sent my agent, the press release's logline. They were nearly identical. But then, I continued, we requested the contracts. I clicked again. The forged assignment agreement appeared on the screen. My name. My fake signature. Nicole's very real one. This, I said, is an agreement assigning my script to Harrington's company. You'll notice a few things. The incorrect middle initial. The signature that doesn't match any of my legal documents. And, perhaps most importantly, the fact that I was verifiably in Los Angeles on the day I supposedly signed this, while the document was executed in Palm Springs. The room shifted. Murmurs. Phones held up, snapping pictures, recording. This was done without my knowledge, I said. Without my consent. My intellectual property was laundered through a forged signature and a person I trusted more than anyone. I didn't say Nicole's name. I didn't need to. It was right there on the screen. I took a breath. I'm not here to give you a sob story, I said. I'm incredibly privileged. I've had success most filmmakers only dream of. I also made some bad decisions. I stepped back. I checked out. I let other people take the wheel. That's on me. I let the silence sit for a moment. But there's a bigger story here, I continued. About how power works in this town. About how the people holding the money and the contracts will bend the rules, cheat, and steal to keep control of the stories that don't belong to them. I'm a white guy with an Oscar and a very good lawyer. If this can happen to me, imagine what happens to people without those things. That landed. I could feel it. We'll be pursuing legal action, I finished. Civil and, if necessary, criminal. In the meantime, I wanted to reclaim my name. My work. And to say, publicly, that Ashes of Fame, my version, the one I wrote, is not dead. It was stolen. And now, I'm taking it back. I stepped away as questions erupted. Marcia fielded most of them, rattling off statutes and case law like she was born doing it. I answered a few about how I felt, about Nicole, about whether this meant we were divorcing. I'm not here to talk about my marriage, I said when someone pushed. I'm here to talk about my work. Which was technically true. The marriage would do whatever it was going to do. With or without microphones. By the time I left the stage, my phone was buzzing non-stop. Missed calls from Nicole. From my agent. From numbers labeled unknown that were definitely studio execs smelling blood in the water. I didn't answer any of them. The fallout was faster than I expected, which is saying something in a town that can turn yesterday's scandal into today's punchline by lunch. Within 24 hours, Variety ran a headline. Producer Ethan Harrington accused of forgery, IP theft by Oscar winner Miles Carter. Other outlets followed. Screenshots of the forged contract trended on Twitter and Instagram. People circled Nicole's signature like true crime detectives, as if they could extract a confession from her looped letters. Harrington released a statement, something about misunderstandings and clerical errors. It didn't land. His lawyers tried a more aggressive angle, threatening countersuits, insisting I'd verbally agreed to assign the script. Then Marcia dropped their internal emails, obtained legally, she assured me, where a junior lawyer expressed concern about the signature's authenticity and was told to make it work. The guilds got involved. Writers, directors. They don't agree on much, but they all agreed that forging a member's name to steal his script was a bridge too far. Petitions circulated. Quiet calls were made. Deals suddenly fell through. Within a month, Harrington's production company was under review. His studio deal evaporated. The phrase pending investigation started appearing next to his name in the trades. A licensing board, yes, they have those for producers, who knew, announced they were suspending his ability to oversee guild projects until the matter was resolved. Unofficially, he was done. His name had gone from asset to liability overnight. Hollywood is nothing if not efficient when it comes to self-preservation. Nicole did not fare much better. The studio quietly removed her from the Ashes of Glory project. Then from another. Calls stopped. Offers evaporated. Her agent dropped her to focus on existing clients, which is Hollywood for you radioactive now. She called me, over and over. Left voicemails that swung wildly between anger, denial, and tearful regret. How could you do this to me? One said. You've ruined my career. In another, softer, I made a mistake, Miles. I thought if I got my break, he'd leave you alone. I didn't know he forged your name. I swear. Please call me. Did she know? Did she not? Lawyers could argue about that until the sun burned out. But the result was the same. She'd helped someone walk off with my work, and I'd helped light the match that burned down their little scheme. We separated, quietly. No dramatic public statements. No Instagram notes app screenshots. She moved into a condo in West Hollywood. I stayed in the house in Los Feliz with the dog and the herb garden that had mostly died while I was too busy drinking to water it. It was sad. It was also, in a messed up way, freeing. Because for the first time in a long time, I was angry in a useful way. When you have your script stolen and your life blown up in public, you have two options, hide or write. I wrote. Ashes of Fame stopped being just a project I'd abandoned. It became the thing I woke up for. I stripped it down, then rebuilt it, using everything that had just happened as rocket fuel. The story, which had originally been this slightly abstract meditation on burnout, turned into something sharper, nastier, funnier. It was about a director who stepped out of the spotlight for love and watched his world implode when his wife and a producer stole his script. It was about ego and power and the dumb things we do when we're scared of becoming irrelevant. It was also about lawyers, because after Marcia, I'd learned to respect the art form. I leaned into the humor. The absurdity of it all. The ridiculous emails. The passive-aggressive texts. The way people who'd ignored me for years suddenly remembered my number the second I became a headline again. I wrote scenes where the producer, a thinly veiled Harrington stand-in named Blaine, tried to explain forgery as a creative interpretation of consent. Where the wife character, renamed Lily, practiced accepting an award for a movie she knew she didn't deserve credit for. Where the director's therapist accidentally pitched 3 blockbuster ideas while trying to convince him to move on. I made myself the butt of the joke as much as anyone. The long, humiliating drunken nights. The self-pity. The way I'd practically gift-wrapped my life and handed it to people who didn't deserve it. When I finished the new draft, it was messy and way too long, but it felt honest. My agent, who'd stayed remarkably loyal through all this, read it overnight and called me at 6 in the morning. "This is the best thing you've ever written," he said. "I mean it. It's brutal. And funny. And current. And, are you sure you want to make this? People are going to know exactly who you're talking about." "Good," I said. "Let them." Studios called. Platforms called. Streamers called. Everyone wanted a piece of the comeback story. Some wanted to soften it, make the producer more sympathetic. One exec suggested turning it into a limited series with 3 spin-offs. In the end, I went with a mid-budget distributor I trusted. People I'd worked with on my first film. They gave me control and a modest but decent budget. Enough to shoot it right without turning it into a circus. Shooting Ashes of Fame was like exorcising a demon while holding a mirror. We recreated moments that were barely cooled off in my memory. I watched actors say lines I'd heard in my kitchen, my lawyer's office, that hotel ballroom. We built a fake press conference set, and when I yelled action, the actor playing me walked up to the podium and delivered a version of the speech I'd given, slightly tweaked for legal reasons. Between takes, I joked with the crew. I made fun of myself. I told stories about my real life that were too ridiculous to put on screen because no one would believe them. It felt good. It felt like work again. When we wrapped, the cast and crew gave me one of those little framed clapperboards with our shooting dates on it. On the back, someone had written, "To Miles, thanks for trusting us with your mess." I laughed until I almost cried. Ashes of Fame premiered at a fall festival. Not one of the massive, paparazzi-swarmed ones. A smaller, respectable one in a city with good food and bad weather. I walked the red carpet alone, no Nicole on my arm, no Harrington lurking in the shadows. Reporters asked if I was nervous. I said yes. They asked if the movie was about my life. I said, "It's inspired by true stupidity." The lights went down. The movie played. The audience laughed. A lot. They winced in the right places, too. But mostly, they laughed. They saw the ridiculousness of it all. The vanity. The desperation. Even the pain, when framed right, turned into something bearable. Shareable. When the credits rolled, people stood. Not everyone, but enough. I stood too, in the dark, feeling something unclench in my chest. By the time awards season rolled around again, the movie had become one of those surprise contenders the trades like to pretend they didn't see coming. Think pieces debated whether it was too inside baseball or the definitive satire of modern Hollywood. People used words like brave and self-lacerating. I just kept thinking about that night on the couch, drunk, watching my old movie on mute while my wife packed for someone else's life. This felt a world away. The studio pushed for awards. Screeners went out. Campaigns were mounted. I did the whole thing again, Q&As, panels, interviews where people pretended to care deeply about artistic process when what they really cared about was page views. And then, one more time, I found myself sitting in a tux, in a theater full of sequins and desperation, waiting for someone to open an envelope. I didn't win that night. Some other director did, for a movie about climate change and grief that was very important and very earnest. I applauded. I meant it. I know how much it matters. I also knew I'd be fine without another statue. Because here's the thing, the real win had happened long before that envelope. It happened when I walked on that stage at the press conference and said, "This is mine," and meant my life as much as my script. It happened when I stopped being a memory in someone else's story and started being the idiot hero of my own again. Nicole wasn't there. Harrington definitely wasn't there. Last I heard, he was developing independent projects somewhere in Europe, which is code for no one here will return his calls. Nicole booked a small role in some streaming show shot in Canada. I watched the pilot out of morbid curiosity. She was good. She'd always been good. Sometimes I think about calling her. Not to rekindle anything, we're long past that, but to say, we really did make a hell of a mess, didn't we? To laugh about it like old classmates who survived a weird school. Maybe I will. Or maybe some things are better left in the blooper reel. People ask me now if I regret stepping back, if I regret loving someone enough to tank my own career for a while. The answer is complicated. Would I recommend it as a career strategy? Absolutely not. Forbes is not going to give up everything for your spouse as a business tip anytime soon. But regret? I don't know. Without all of it, the love, the betrayal, the forged signature, the tears in that beige lawyer's office, I wouldn't have Ashes of Fame. I wouldn't have the version of myself who can tell this story with a straight face and a crooked smile. Yeah, it was a bad stretch. A humiliating, painful, weirdly cinematic stretch. At the time, it felt like the end credits were rolling on my life. Turns out, it was just the end of Act 2. And as any screenwriter will tell you, Act 3 is where the fun really starts. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.